Have you ever wondered what happens when someone keeps pushing a gentle soul too far? Not just once, not just twice, but over and over again until something inside them silently snaps. If you've ever been the one who stayed quiet just to keep the peace, if you've ever felt like your heart is carrying weight it was never meant to hold, then this message is for you. Because one day, even the kindest hearts reach their limit, and when they do, everything changes. Stick around till the end of this video, because what you're going to discover isn't just about narcissists and empaths. It's about you, your strength, and what you're truly capable of. Empaths are often misunderstood. People see them as soft, passive, overly emotional. But that's not the truth. The truth is, empaths are powerful. They're the ones who carry other people's pain without complaint. They walk into a room and feel everything. The tension, the sadness, the unspoken words, and still they choose to be kind. Still they offer grace. Still they give love, even when it's not returned. That's not weakness. That's courage most people will never understand. But here's where things begin to crack. Narcissists, those who crave control, who seek validation through domination, spot empaths like predators spot prey. Not because empaths are weak, but because they're open, because they're willing to forgive, because they see the good even when it's buried deep beneath manipulation. Narcissists read that openness and twist it into an opportunity. They test the waters. First, a small lie. Then a guilt trip. Then silent treatments, gaslighting, blame, shifting, and each time the empath absorbs the hit. Not because they don't feel it, but because they do. Because they hope the other person is just hurt, just misunderstood, just in need of compassion. So they stay, they give, they shrink themselves to avoid conflict. They adjust their tone, they second guess their feelings. They blame themselves, and the narcissist, they keep pushing because they think they've won. They mistake empathy for surrender. They confuse emotional intelligence with submission. But what they don't see, what they never see, is that there's a line, a quiet, invisible line inside every empath. And once that line is crossed, nothing is ever the same again. Empaths don't explode, they don't scream, they don't fight back the way narcissists expect. No, when an empath reaches their limit, something far more powerful happens. They detach, they go silent, not out of fear, but clarity. And that silence, that's where the real strength begins. But we're not there yet, we're just getting started. If you've ever been the one who keeps trying, keeps hoping, keeps forgiving, this journey is for you, because you are not alone. And when you finally realize what's happening, when you finally feel that shift in your soul, everything will begin to change. Keep watching. What you'll discover might just change your life. Narcissists don't just stumble into people's lives by accident. They seek out specific personalities, those who shine quietly, those who feel deeply, those who love with no conditions. Because to a narcissist, those traits aren't signs of strength. To them, they're signs of easy control. It's not admiration they feel for kindness. It's hunger, a hunger to feed their fragile ego, to feel powerful, to feel needed. But it's not real connection they want. It's domination dressed as affection. At their core, narcissists are deeply insecure. Behind the mask of arrogance, behind the charm and confidence, lies a void they try desperately to hide. They fear being exposed. They fear being unloved. So they build walls of superiority. They create illusions. And they wear a mask so convincing that even the most emotionally intelligent people fall for it. At first, the empath, with their healing nature and emotional openness, becomes the perfect match for this broken need. Not because they lack awareness, but because they see potential in people. They give the benefit of the doubt. They believe wounds can be healed with love. And the narcissist uses that belief like a weapon. They start slow, offering charm, affection, admiration, the love bombing phase, the compliments, the connection, the false promises. It feels like a dream until it turns into a slow, quiet nightmare. What makes it so dangerous is how subtle it begins. They criticize softly with a smile. They rewrite history with confidence, making the empath question their own memory. They create confusion, not chaos, because confusion makes people freeze, and freezing makes control easier. The narcissist becomes the center of everything. The empath slowly forgets how to breathe without their approval. And the worst part, they don't even realize it's happening. This is no accident. It's patterned behavior. It's psychological warfare wrapped in affection. The narcissist's greatest weapon isn't rage. It's control masked as care. They isolate without isolating. They drain energy while pretending to give. And every time the empath tries to bring peace, to talk things through, to fix what's broken, they're met with silence or blame. The narcissist twists reality until the empath feels like they're the problem, like they're overreacting, like they're not enough. But here's the truth that changes everything. The problem was never the empath's sensitivity. It was the narcissist's inability to face their own emptiness. The narcissist needed someone to mirror back what they could never feel themselves: love, compassion, safety. And when they find someone who can offer that, they don't protect it. They exploit it. The empath suffers quietly, but they also observe. They begin to notice the patterns, the cycles, the manipulation hidden beneath the smiles. And once awareness begins to rise, once they start seeing the truth behind the mask, everything begins to shift. Not all at once, but piece by piece, the illusion breaks. The next chapter of the journey begins when the empath no longer asks, "What's wrong with me?" and starts asking, "Why am I allowing this?" That single question has the power to unravel the entire game. Because once the empath sees the pattern, they can never unsee it. And once they start waking up, the narcissist's control begins to crumble. Long before the empath walks away, they endure. They absorb pain like it's their purpose. They carry emotions that don't belong to them. Not because they're blind, but because they hope. Hope that the love they give will awaken something in the other person. Hope that patience will soften the harshness. Hope that understanding will replace manipulation with connection. That hope is not weakness. It's a form of love that goes beyond logic. It's a strength most people can't even recognize. But hope hurts when it's one-sided. Every time the narcissist withdraws affection, the empath questions themselves. Every time they get blamed for something they didn't do, they try harder, they speak softer, they shrink smaller, they walk on eggshells in their own mind, wondering how to keep the peace, how to avoid the next emotional ambush. It's not that they don't notice the manipulation, it's that they keep giving the benefit of the doubt. They keep loving through the pain, thinking maybe, just maybe, the narcissist will finally understand. That's what most people don't see. They don't see the inner war the empath fights every day. They don't see the nights spent crying in silence, the mornings filled with self-doubt, the weight of constantly questioning their own worth. They smile, they function, they show up. But inside, there's a storm, one that never stops. What keeps them in that storm isn't ignorance, it's belief. The belief that everyone has good in them. The belief that healing is possible. And so they stay longer than they should. They give more than they can. They tolerate what should never be tolerated, not because they're naivety, but because they're loyal to their values, because they value love over pride, connection over control, peace over power. But the tragedy is this: narcissists don't value the same things. They don't care about peace, they care about dominance. They don't want love, they want loyalty without accountability. And the more the empath gives, the more the narcissist takes. It's never enough. It was never meant to be. Because the narcissist doesn't want partnership, they want submission. And yet the empath holds on. Even when it hurts, even when it breaks them, they hold on to the dream of what the relationship could be. They remember the good moments, even if they were just illusions. And they keep giving, thinking maybe love will fix it. Maybe this time will be different. But something shifts when the suffering becomes unbearable. The empath starts to notice the cost, the emotional exhaustion, the slow erosion of self-worth, the dimming of their light. And when they begin to realize that love should not feel like survival, something inside them starts to awaken. This awakening doesn't come with rage, it comes with clarity. The kind of clarity that whispers, "This is not love." And once that whisper becomes a voice, the suffering that was once silent starts to speak louder. It starts to say, "You deserve better." It starts to say, "This is not your burden to carry." It starts to say, "It's time." That's the beginning of the end, not of the empath, but of the control the narcissist had over them. Because once the empath begins to hear their own voice again, the silence becomes strength, and that strength begins to grow. There comes a moment when something changes, not in the narcissist, but in the empath. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, like the final drop in an already full cup. And that one drop is all it takes. The exhaustion becomes too heavy, the confusion too deep, the silence too loud. And suddenly, what once felt like love starts to feel like a cage built from guilt, shame, and manipulation. And the empath, who once gave everything, starts to feel nothing. This isn't numbness from weakness. It's the body protecting the soul. It's the mind pulling away from chaos. It's the spirit saying, enough. When an empath reaches their breaking point, it's not because they failed, it's because they finally saw through the illusion. All the second chances, all the rationalizing, all the hope, it begins to unravel. And in that unraveling, truth is found. The empath begins to realize that no amount of love can fix someone who doesn't want to be honest. That no amount of compassion can heal someone who doesn't even see their own wounds. That no matter how deeply they feel, if the other person thrives on control and cruelty, there will never be peace. And that realization breaks the illusion they've clung to for so long. At first, this awakening is terrifying. Because for so long, the empath was focused on the other person, their pain, their past, their trauma. But now the focus shifts inward. The question changes from why are they like this to why am I still here? And that's the most powerful question of all. because now the empath isn't looking for excuses. They're looking for truth. The truth is, staying has become more painful than leaving. The silence, once used to keep peace, now feels like a betrayal to their own soul. The empathy that once healed now feels like it's being used against them. And the love they gave so freely is now draining their spirit. That's when the emotional switch flips. That's when the heart stops chasing. That's when the empath begins to choose themselves. But even as they pull back, the narcissist pushes harder. They sense the shift. They feel the control slipping. So they love bomb again. They apologize. They cry. They beg. They say all the right words. But something's different this time. The empath doesn't feel it because it's not real. It's a performance. And once the empath knows the script, they can't be fooled by the act. This is where the internal battle becomes strongest, because the empath's heart still wants to believe, still wants to fix, still wants to hold on to the good. But the mind has finally caught up, and the soul is tired of being betrayed by its own hope. That's the breaking point, not of their kindness, but of their tolerance, not of their love, but of their silence. And when that point is reached, the change is irreversible. The empath doesn't beg, doesn't argue, doesn't explain. They simply start to detach slowly, quietly, firmly. The same love that once made them stay now gives them the strength to leave. Because love doesn't mean losing yourself to save someone else. And once the empath sees that clearly, they're no longer afraid of walking away. When an empath finally awakens, it doesn't look like revenge. It doesn't look like bitterness. It looks like peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from comfort, but the kind that comes after chaos, the kind that's earned. There is no dramatic confrontation, no need to prove a point, because the empath has already won the moment they stop trying to fix someone who was never willing to heal. The awakening is subtle, but it's powerful. It starts with self-respect, the realization that their value was never tied to how much they could endure. That love isn't meant to feel like walking through fire just to earn warmth. That relationship should nourish, not deplete. That giving endlessly to someone who only takes is not love. It's self-abandonment. And when they see this clearly, they begin to rise. This rise isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who they were before the manipulation, before the confusion, before the self-doubt crept in. The empath doesn't need to become stronger. They've always been strong. What they needed was clarity. And once they have it, their steps become firmer, their voice steadier, their presence quieter, but more powerful than ever before. And that's what shakes the narcissist to the core. Not anger, not retaliation, but detachment. The kind of detachment that says, you no longer have power over me, because narcissists survive on reactions, on chaos, on emotional control. But when the empath doesn't react, when they stop explaining, when they stop trying, they take back everything the narcissist tried to steal. The narcissist may try again, with charm, with guilt, with carefully crafted words meant to pull the empath back into the cycle. But the difference now is that the empath sees it all. They see the game. They hear the lies underneath the flattery. They feel the manipulation behind every apology. And instead of responding with hope, they respond with distance. Not because they no longer care, but because they care about themselves more. This shift is not just emotional, it's spiritual. It's the reclaiming of identity, the rediscovery of joy, the rebuilding of confidence that was slowly chipped away. The empath starts investing in their own healing, their own growth, their own peace. They learn that love can be soft and still have boundaries. That empathy can coexist with strength. That forgiveness doesn't require access. And in this new space, the empath begins to breathe again, deeply, fully, without fear. They reconnect with people who respect their heart. They learn to say no without guilt. They learn that walking away from pain is not abandonment. It's self-preservation. And slowly, the light returns. Not because someone else brought it back, but because they remembered it was always inside them. That is the power of an awakened empath. Not loud, not vengeful, but unshakably calm. The narcissist pushed and pushed, thinking the empath would bend forever. But they forgot, when you push a soul too far, it doesn't just break, it transforms. And once that transformation begins, there's no going back. The moment the empath finally walks away, everything changes. Not just in their environment, but inside their soul. There's a silence that follows. But this time, it's not the silence of confusion or fear. It's the silence of peace. The kind of peace that only comes after choosing yourself. After standing at the edge of emotional exhaustion and deciding, no more. And while it may seem like the end, it's really the beginning of becoming who they were always meant to be. Meanwhile, the narcissist feels the shift like a wound they didn't expect. For so long, they believed they had full control. They believed the empath would never leave, that the pattern would continue. But this time, something is different. There are no tears, no pleas, no arguments, just distance, just silence, just boundaries that are no longer negotiable. And to someone who feeds on control, that silence is terrifying because they're no longer being fed. At first, the narcissist will try to reclaim what they lost, not out of love, but out of need. Out of desperation to feel important again, they'll use every tactic that once worked: sweet words, fake apologies, false promises. They'll remind the empath of the good times, trying to blur the lines between memory and reality. But what they fail to understand is this: once an empath sees clearly, they can't be blinded again. The illusion is gone. And with it, the narcissist's power. This is the turning point, the reversal of roles. The narcissist, once in control, is now powerless. And the empath, once the giver, becomes the protector of their own peace. Not with hatred, but with calm detachment. Not with revenge, but with dignity. They don't need to prove anything. Their absence speaks louder than any words ever could. And while the narcissist spirals, searching for new supply, trying to fill the emptiness, the empath begins to rebuild. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. They start doing the things they once gave up. They rediscover joy in simple moments. They laugh again, not because someone allowed them to, but because they feel free. And in that freedom, they find strength they forgot they had. Healing isn't linear. There are days the empath may question their decision. Days when memories whisper lies and doubt tries to creep in. But every time they choose not to return, every time they protect their space, they grow stronger. They begin to understand that walking away wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. That loving someone else never meant losing themselves. This chapter isn't about the narcissist anymore. It's about the empath. It's about rising from pain with grace. About setting standards and not lowering them for temporary comfort. It's about realizing that boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They are gates to protect the heart. And that kind of power, it doesn't shout. It simply exists, steady, unshaken, free. The narcissist loses not because they were left behind, but because they never expected the empath to rise. But the empath does rise, stronger, wiser, and no longer available to be broken. Because once someone chooses peace over chaos, love over control, and self-worth over approval, there's no force strong enough to pull them back into darkness. There's a moment after the storm where everything becomes still, not empty, but full of clarity, full of wisdom, full of a power that was always there, just buried beneath years of noise, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion. This is the moment when the empath realizes they were never broken. They were just carrying too much that didn't belong to them. And now that they've let it go, they're not just free, they're unshakable. What the narcissist never understood is that empathy is not a weakness, it's a force that heals, sees, and transforms. Yes, it makes people soft, but it also makes them strong in ways that can't be measured by volume or force. The empath doesn't need to fight to be powerful. Their strength is quiet. Their courage is consistent. Their resilience is rooted in love, not for others, but now finally for themselves. And that's what changes everything. Because once the empath begins to love themselves the way they once loved others, they become unstoppable. They no longer seek validation from the outside. They don't chase closure. They don't ask for explanations. They don't beg to be seen because they see themselves. And that self-awareness becomes their armor. There's a different kind of confidence that comes from surviving emotional abuse. It's not arrogant. It's not loud. It's peaceful. And that peace sends a message to the world. I've been through darkness, and I didn't lose my light. That light is now protected, not hidden, not dimmed, but guarded by boundaries, self-respect, and truth. The narcissist may try to return. They may circle back, hoping the door is still open. But the door the empath once left unlocked out of love is now closed out of wisdom. There's no anger in that closure, only clarity. The empath doesn't need revenge. They don't need the narcissist to feel their pain. Because healing is the victory, peace is the revenge, growth is the triumph. And now the empath stands tall, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Not as someone who was broken, but as someone who broke free. They've learned the hardest lessons. They've faced the deepest wounds. And yet they chose to rise. To forgive, not to let someone back in, but to let themselves move forward. That kind of strength doesn't fade. It multiplies. It inspires. It leads. So if you're watching this and your heart feels heavy, if you're in the middle of that storm or just beginning to feel the shift, know this: your breaking point is not the end. It's the start of your becoming. You are not too sensitive. You are not too emotional. You are not too much. You are enough. You've always been enough. And the moment you choose to believe that, everything around you will begin to change. Your story does not end in pain. It begins in power. And that power was never given to you by anyone. It was always yours. Now it's time to use it, to rise, to rebuild, to live fully, freely, and without apology. The world doesn't need a hardened heart. It needs strong hearts that stay kind. It needs empaths who've been through fire and still choose light. You are that light. Don't ever forget it.